So, the story of what might be the next huge revolution in education, well, it doesn't start where you'd think. Not in some fancy university lab or a big tech company boardroom. Nope. It starts with a simple, everyday thing. One person tutoring his cousin. A single act that would end up sparking an idea for an AI that could, just maybe, become a personal tutor for every single person on Earth. It all kicked off with Sal Khan's cousin, Nadia. Now, Nadia was incredibly bright. She could solve these complex logic puzzles no problem. But when they got to something that seems pretty basic, unit conversion, she just hit a wall. It was like her brain shut down. And it wasn't because she wasn't smart. It was because of a very specific gap in her knowledge, a gap that her regular classroom had already moved past, leaving her stuck. Khan had a name for what was happening to Nadia. He called it Swiss cheese learning. And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. A student gets a 95 on a test, an A. Awesome, right? But hold on. That still means there's 5% of the material they didn't get. The class moves on to the next topic, but that 5% gap is still there. It's a little hole in their foundation. And over time, these holes start to add up until the whole structure just can't support the next level of learning.
So seeing this problem firsthand, Khan set out to build a solution. His first crack at it was to build a totally new kind of schoolhouse, one that could reach anybody, anywhere on the planet, and start patching up those holes in their learning.
And this new approach was the complete opposite of the traditional model of education, the one where everyone moves forward at the same fixed pace. Instead, Khan championed what's called mastery learning. Here, you move at your own pace. You learn by doing, not just by listening. And the goal isn't just to get a good grade on a one-time exam. The goal is to learn until you get 100%, to actually repair any gaps before you're allowed to move on. And wow, did this idea explode. It started with just some phone calls with Nadia. Then a friend suggested he upload some tutorials to YouTube. By 2009, he was reaching 50,000 people a month and quit his high-paying hedge fund job to go all in on Khan Academy. And today, it's a global powerhouse serving over 150 million learners. But even with all that success, Khan knew something was missing. There was still a big difference between his videos and having a real one-on-one tutor. And then, the aha moment arrived. A brand new technology came on the scene that honestly felt like it was pulled straight out of a science fiction movie. A technology that could finally close that gap. The first time Sal Khan got to play around with GPT-4, he was just blown away. This wasn't like any AI he'd ever seen. The answers it gave felt real, authentic. It wasn't some rigid pre-programmed bot. It felt like it could actually reason and have a conversation. All of a sudden, that Star Trek dream of a truly personal tutor felt very, very real. So the mission became crystal clear. Take this unbelievable new power and build the ultimate tool for learning. But they knew it couldn't be a tool that just gives away answers. No, it had to be a tutor that would ask the right questions. And what they built is called Khanmigo. It's an AI tutor, but it's built on one really important idea. The Socratic method. It's designed specifically not to give you the answer. Instead, it guides you with questions. It gives you little nudges to help you make that final leap of understanding all on your own. And to see just how wild this is, imagine this. A student can have a real-time chat with Jay Gatsby from The Great Gatsby and ask him directly about the green light. Suddenly, reading a book isn't a passive chore anymore. It's an interactive dialogue. It just makes the material come alive in a way that was never possible before. And this Socratic approach works just as well with really complex science. So here, when Khan makes a pretty good guess about how a drug like Ozempic works, Khanmigo doesn't just say, "Nope, you're wrong." It says, "Close," which is so encouraging. And then it asks a follow-up question that pushes him to think a little deeper and connect the dots for himself. That's what a great tutor does. But honestly, Khanmigo is so much more than just a Q&A bot. It's a writing partner that helps you sharpen your essays. It's a debate coach that pokes holes in your arguments so you can make them stronger. It's a history simulator that lets you talk to George Washington. And maybe most importantly, it's a tireless assistant for teachers that helps with the endless work of lesson plans and grading. Okay, but let's be real. A technology this powerful, it obviously brings up some very legitimate fears. So it's time to face those dragons head on. First up, the big one. If a machine can write poetry and create art, does that spell the end for human creativity? It's a really fascinating debate.
On one side, you have thinkers like Noam Chomsky who argue that AI is just a superpowered pattern matcher. It finds correlations and data, but the human mind, we seek to create real explanations. On the other side, you have Sal Khan, who argues that, hey, all human creativity is built on what came before. Einstein stood on the shoulders of giants. Shakespeare remixed old stories. From his perspective, AI isn't a replacement. It's a brand new tool, like a creative partner. And then, of course, there's the fear that probably keeps every single teacher and parent up at night. What about cheating? This is a huge deal, and Kamigo was actually designed from the ground up to deal with it. First, because it's based on asking questions. You can't just copy-paste an answer. It's a dialogue. Second, it's designed to be a coach, not a ghostwriter. It helps you brainstorm and refine your own ideas. And maybe the most important part, it's totally transparent. Teachers can see the entire conversation between the student and the AI, which turns what could be a cheating tool into an incredible window into how a student is actually thinking.
So, with those fears being addressed, Khan believes we can start to move forward towards what he thinks could be a new golden age for humanity.
And this right here, this is why this all matters so much. Right now, access to a good education is just not equal. Half of all high schools in the US don't even offer calculus. 40% don't offer physics. A quarter of them don't even offer algebra 2. This isn't a problem with the students, it's a massive problem of access. You see, decades ago, an educational researcher named Benjamin Bloom discovered what he called the 2 sigma problem. He found that students who get one-on-one tutoring perform 2 standard deviations better than kids in a normal classroom. Now, what does that mean? That's the difference between being a dead average student and being in the 98th percentile. For decades, being able to give that kind of personal attention to every student has been the impossible dream, the holy grail of education. But with AI, maybe, just maybe, it's not impossible anymore. Khan's vision is that this technology can finally solve that 2 sigma problem for the entire world, that it can unleash so much human potential that it'll create a new golden age, one that makes our current era look like a dark age by comparison. It's a huge, bold vision. And that really leaves us with this one profound question. For the very first time in human history, we can actually see a path to giving every single child on the planet their own personal tutor. One that's endlessly patient, infinitely knowledgeable, and always available. So what happens to the world? What happens to human potential when we finally make that a reality?